what happens now and what will happen is always the result of what has happened in the past. History is a great teacher. Whether we learn from it or not is always up to us. In this documentary, we try and have a look at a very important chapter of history, a time when the need for reform was being very strongly felt in Islam. Was this need even justified? Did this reform even happen? What was the message waiting to be delivered at a time of great chaos?
Muslims lost power essentially at the beginning of the 19th century. And the loss of power presented them with a problem which was actually a new problem for the Muslim world, which was how to create a Muslim society without power. Supports for qadis, supports for Islamic learning, those are almost entirely removed by the British.
Why we're being ruled, by these people would be because we're not good Muslims. And if we'd been good Muslims in the past, and been more loyal to our original tradition, we wouldn't have become weak and disunited, which would have created the circumstances for colonial rule.
The Mughal Empire divided and weakened by internal conflicts, differences based on faith, disparities so great the Muslims could not remain united. Abandoning the original teachings of Islam that united all, the Muslims were plunged into darkness. Many movements started to emerge in order to make sense of the new situation and to revive the true teachings of Islam.
The religious elites had a particular response, which was to engage in educational innovation and development, because they believed that education was the key for the Muslim community to survive without political power.
As soon as British took over, the Muslims found themselves backward as such to participate in the British administration.
It was evident that something needed to be done. Something that could strengthen the Muslims. Something that would at least make them meaningful and worthwhile to the new system. Educational institutes started to be established.
The first institution was set up, which is Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College in Aligarh. In that one, it was all secular education, which was needed by the British.
Sayyid Ahmad Khan was concerned to try and create systems which would enable his class, which he regarded both as Hindu and Muslim, not just Muslim, to perform the same roles under the British that they had performed under the Mughals.
Sayyid Ahmad Khan develops an approach to this situation, trying to show the British that the Muslims are loyal, they're not solely responsible for 1857, and trying to show Muslims, if they take to education, they can make a position for themselves.
The approach of Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan to provide secular education was one positive step to elevate the social status of the population. But it only had an impact on certain sections of Muslim society in North India. It only catered for urban middle class and never reached the grassroots. His reinterpretation of Islam and methods to educate society were greatly opposed by traditional Orthodox Muslim groups. Theologians of another mainstream movement came up with an alternative.
The Deobandis are a religious group that see education as the key for Muslims to survive in colonial India, but an education which does not make concessions to Western knowledge or through the medium of English.
And they were only teaching the religious education. They were not teaching anything else. They were convinced that the salvation of the Muslims is only in knowing their religion, nothing else. That was unfortunate.
What they were doing, they were trying to present an understanding of Islam which fitted with the circumstances of colonial rule, which would make some compromises with the colonial rule, but on the whole, would not be accepting Western scientific knowledge or Western philosophy.
There was great confusion amongst the Muslims in deciding which path they should take. Their decision would be crucial in deciding the means of their salvation and would enable them to successfully deal with the challenges of the time.
Religion is a very important part of a human being, and more so for the Muslims. But although Islam tells us everything that we require in our life, and as we know that the Holy Quran tells us everything that is needed, but we cannot make it something totally unbalanced, like having too much religious education or secular education and no religious education.
The Quran teaches the Muslims the best moral values and how to distinguish between right and wrong. The Prophet of Islam, peace and blessings of God be upon him, showed through his example how to lead a successful life as an individual and as a community. But the true message of Islam had been lost through generations. 1400 years after the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of God be upon him, the Muslims had lost the essence of Islam, and most importantly, they had forgotten its teachings of moderation.
Every human being has got two dimensions. That's why we call human being a theomorphic being. That is, he's got a spiritual side and he's got a physical side. You cannot ignore one at the cost of another. You must develop the physical side, but you must develop the spiritual side if you want to keep the balance in the world.
It was a time of great uncertainty for Muslims who were unsure of how to revive Islam and bring back its golden age. Not only were the Muslims left behind in material development, they also wrongly understood the teachings of Islam and left Islam open to ridicule and attack by other faiths. To make matters worse, the Muslims were divided greatly and disunited in the interpretations of religious doctrine.
Unfortunately, the disunity amongst Muslims has been the prime cause of their decline virtually everywhere. In every Muslim empire, at different times they have had the disunity. Whenever they were united, they did great things. But mostly they have remained disunited.
Christian missionaries took advantage of the situation and became very active in the propagation of their faith. In the late 19th century, the conversion of subjugated Muslims into Christianity reached hundreds of thousands every year. On another front, the Arya Samajists were doing their utmost to convert Muslims to Hinduism. The response to all this from the Muslim leadership was to do next to nothing.
So the ground had been established. This was exactly the time that had been prophesied by the Holy Prophet of Islam, Hadhrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Islam was going to be devoid of its original teachings, when all Muslims were going to be disunited, and when Islam was going to be under the attack of all other religions. It was prophesied by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that this was going to be the time of the advent of the promised Messiah, who was going to be a reformer and who was going to be the Mahdi, the divinely guided one.
In the subcontinent, the province Punjab was the center of all the debates, accusations, and attacks on Islam. From the same region, a person started to become known as the champion of Islam. A famous German researcher and Christian missionary, Julius Richter, records, Ghulam is a remarkable man. He writes clever books and in such elegant Urdu, Persian, and Arabic that he is able to challenge his opponents in the most graceful Arabic literary articles to admit or to disprove his divine mission. The man on this divine mission was Hadhrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, who initiated a movement by the name of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam.
Hadhrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Qadiani alayhi salatu wasalam claimed that he was divinely instructed to claim to be the promised Messiah and the Mahdi. He also declared that he had gained this status through the complete subservience of the Holy Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So with this claim, he started on a twofold mission. One, demystifying the teachings of Islam and trying to bring them back to their pristine form as they had been preached by the Holy Founder, the Holy Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the second being defending Islam from the attacks and the allegations that were being made on Islam from its opponents and from believers of other faiths.
The kind of response, say, that Ghulam Ahmad is providing in the Punjab is very different, for instance, from that provided by Syed Ahmad Khan or that provided by the founders of Deoband. And he sees himself very much, as I see it, as needing to defend Islam against Christian missionaries who are very active, Arya Samajist, Hindu missionaries.
Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad engaged in numerous public debates and dialogue with Christian missionaries and Hindu revivalists. The victory of Islam in these discussions were not only cherished by the Muslims, but the attendees belonging to other faiths also took the positive message of Islam. To promote the progress of Muslims in a peaceful state, he instructed the people to abide by the rule of the land. He encouraged Muslims to take to education. A balanced secular and religious education, an advancement in spiritual and moral values was his motive, and he taught that this could only be achieved by building up a living connection with God. He believed in jihad of the pen for the supremacy of Islam and authored many books.
Through his magnificent writings, he was not only defending Islam from the attacks that were being made by people of other faiths and the opponents of Islam, but he was also trying to bring to light the actual true message of the holy founder of Islam, Hadhrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hadhrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Qadiani alayhi salatu wasalam declared that he was divinely instructed to proclaim the status of prophethood, the status of a subordinate prophet, a prophet from within the ummah of the holy prophet of Islam, Hadhrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He also declared that he had been told by Allah the Almighty that the promised Messiah, whose advent was promised, was going to be a spiritual leader and not a military leader as believed by many of the Muslims as well. This proclamation brought with it a bitter opposition from not only within the Muslims but from without as well.
During the time of the promised Messiah al-Islam and his claim, some Muslims out of prejudice allied themselves with the Christians to oppose the Ahmadiyya community. And that probably is the ultimate. Muslim associating, allying himself with the Christian to oppose the Muslim.
The Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his teachings were being attacked by the opponents, and yet Muslims were collaborating with the Christian missionaries against the widely celebrated defender of Islam.
Hadhrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib of Qadian alayhi salatu wasalam stated that the opposition that he had to face from within the Ummah and from without was nothing different from the type of the opposition that all prophets of God had to face in the past. He knew that, and he stated and he claimed that the opposition was a reaction which was being manifest because he was trying to demystify the original and the true message of the founder of Islam, Hadhrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he took it as a natural reaction to the task that he was carrying out. And he also knew, and he also thought, and he also claimed that he had signs from God to prove that he was on the right path. And one of the signs that he presented was that his community was constantly growing.
The Ahmadiyya movement had hundreds of thousands of followers by the early 20th century. Thousands of his devotees pledged in allegiance with him to take up his mission of the rejuvenation of Islam.
Hadhrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib of Qadian alayhi salatu wasalam passed away in 1908, leaving behind a foundation and a scheme and a community which was striving for the progress of Islam.
In later years, the state of affairs took a drastic turn, and the British Raj ended in 1947. On the basis of religion, the subcontinent was divided into India with a Hindu majority and Pakistan with a Muslim majority.
The Ahmadi movement is at the forefront of the defense of Islam, and that is an aspect which is sometimes not remembered today because of the sectarianism now within the Islamic community in Pakistan. But that is the reality of the circumstance.
Today, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is further divided on the basis of belief. The divisions within Muslims, the splits where the leaders of one sect are issuing edicts on the followers of another sect. The message of Islam still needs to be delivered to those in the world who are unaware of its true teachings. The important question is, do the teachings of Hadhrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad stand true at present day And what role is the Ahmadiyya movement playing today?
There were mujaddideen, there were muhaddiseen who came at the head of the century in Islam to revive Islam. But it was promised Messiah al-Islam after 1400 years who was due and who claimed that he is the one for whom the world has been waiting. His purpose was not one, but many. One essential one was to revive Islam with its pristine teachings and remove all the innovations that had crept in culturally, socially, or in different manners. To remove disunity amongst Islam, bring them under one banner, and thus create peace.
Hadhrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Qadiani, the promised Messiah ﷺ, writes in his book The Will that I came from God as a manifestation of divine providence, and it is essential for you to witness the second manifestation also. And its coming is better for you because it is everlasting, and its continuity shall not end until the day of judgment. And that second manifestation, Hadhrat Mirza Sahib alayhi salam states, that second manifestation cannot come unless I depart.
Soon after him, an institution of Khilafat was established which carries on his message across the world. A Khilafat that unites the people of all religions, sects and background on one hand to submit to the one creator of us all. Humanity is facing new global challenges, the solution of which the Ahmadiyya community believes rests in the right interpretation of Islam given by the Imam Mahdi. The very same message that was delivered in the subcontinent for the revival of Islam is the need of the day and days to come. The large community, numbering in millions, is now spread across the world, where people from all backgrounds are united, taking the same mission of the promised Messiah, the message of revival of Islam.